Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me. Today, we're going to be looking at a strange topic, cryptograms in music. So, it's not likely that you've spent much of your life wondering about cryptograms in music, but you're going to learn something new today, and a lot of this you will probably find quite surprising. So, firstly, what is a cryptogram? I'm sure you have an idea of what a cryptogram is, but let's just see how this word is composed. So it comes from two words. There's the Greek word kryptin, which in ancient Greek it means to hide or conceal or cover. It also means that in modern Greek. And then we have gramma, which is simply a letter, or can also mean letter is the best translation there. So those two words come together, and we end up with cryptogram. So hidden letters. So it's something that we probably did when we were children, and as modern people, we all tend to scoff at this idea. We make ironic movies about treasure hunts and symbolism, and we have a tendency to believe that it's all just nonsense. Well, people in history didn't think about it that way. People through time, very famous, very influential people, actually took the idea of coded messaging in art specifically very seriously. And we're going to see that this is true in music as well as in visual art, where it's maybe more obvious, and in literature, where it's even more obvious. But still, you'll have people who think that this is all silly. It's not, and we're going to look at what famous composers have done with codes in their music. Some of it is very dark, so we're not going to be dealing with those things. Everything in this video, all the material, is going to be quite fun and uplifting, and some of it actually very moving. So let's get started with the various types of cryptograms. So we're going to be considering in this video names. So a simple thing like encoding somebody's name, and an example of that is Ravel's homage to Haydn, which we're going to look at. Another thing you can do as a cryptogram is a motto. You can embed a motto as a kind of code. And for that, we're going to look at the FAE Sonata for violin and piano, the name of that FAE Sonata. That doesn't look very inspiring, but bear with me. You'll see that it actually is. And the last one, you can also embed concepts if you really know what you're doing. And that's what Liszt did in his Dante symphony. So we've got three kind of levels there. The easiest is names. The next one is a motto. You maybe have to be a bit more creative to do that. And the last one is concepts. And as I said earlier, children do this almost naturally. They come up with codes and ciphers. Very powerful and influential people do it too, but we pretend that we don't know about that. If you know me, you'll know that all of the material I put out has lions somewhere in the background, and the reason for that, it's also a cryptic reference in a way to the fact that my surname means lion. So, anyway, there we are. Okay, so there we have, you should really recognize that is Johann Sebastian Bach holding a sheet of music over there, as I'm sure he was doing for most of his life. And someone once said that all roads lead to Bach. Who said that? Well, it was me. It was nobody special. But I feel like I can get away with saying that. When it comes to music, it's certainly true that all roads just lead back to Bach. That's a personal opinion, I suppose, but I could defend that. In this sense, too, when it comes to coded messages in music, Bach is at the forefront of that as well. So we have this thing called the Bach motif. So firstly, what is a motif? If you're familiar with visual art, painting, for example, a motif is something that an artist will embed and repeat in the art to guide you along. A very simplistic example of this would be something, think of, I might be showing my age here, but Where's Wally? There's cartoons where you have to look for a certain character in the picture. So the artist who designed that drew Wally, or however many Wallies there are in the crowd, and then built everything else around him. So the windows or the whatever's meant to distract you away from Wali. So Wali is a kind of motif. He's something that is embedded in the artwork and in some way governs perhaps even the structure of the artwork. That's a motif. Think of the word motive, it motivates. So there's a thing called the Bach motif, and Bach obviously originated it, but many composers after him, most notably Schumann, drew on this. So we have, of course, Bach's name, B-A-C-H, and if we go from the B, we can write B as B flat, A as A, C as C, and H as B natural. So you might be wondering what I'm on about. And there's a simple reason for this, and it's that the way that you name letters in German is different to how you do it in English. So, in the German way of describing things, B is B flat and H is B natural. It's not important for us to explain why that is right now, but that's how we arrive at the acronym BACH, Bach. So the B flat stands for B, and the H stands for the B natural. And Bach wrote that into some of his music. It looks like this, and so it's B flat A C H. It sounds like this. And why did he do that? Was he just being a little bit egotistical? Maybe a bit of that, but no. It's much more complicated than that. Bach, of course, living in the era in which he lived, people were very concerned about the relationship between numbers and reality and God and everything. So he was doing things with his name and with numbers and letters that were a lot more serious than just self promotion or anything like that. Again, it's difficult for us to have perspective on that because in our day and age, it's so customary, this superstitious skepticism we have. We're in many ways far more superstitious than people in the past were, but we convince ourselves that we're not. And we've lost sight of the way in which things are connected: numbers, music, sound, everything. And Bach was keenly aware of all of this. He was plugged into that way of thinking, and he wrote at the bottom of his compositions, he had the habit of writing SDG, Soli Deo Gloria, in Latin, only to the glory of God. And there's a very interesting video that I will put in the description if you really want to get into this stuff, specifically with reference to Bach. You can go and look at that and you get an impression of how Bach is a kind of Enlightenment mystic. Very interesting field of inquiry. This video, we're not going to dwell on Bach because he deserves his own video, and also because there's just too much to unpack in Bach. So we're going to focus on some more light-hearted examples, and then perhaps in the future we can come back to the Grand Master. So the first one we're going to look at is by Ravel, and there he is looking rather dapper, and this is the Minuet on the name of Haydn, and there's Haydn on the bottom. So what was Ravel writing a minuet about Haydn for? Well, it was composed in 1909, and that's significant because Haydn died in 1809. So 100 years after Haydn's death, a commission was put out. Various composers contributed. So Ravel's not the only person who contributed to this volume of compositions that are kind of tributes to Haydn, because Haydn is such an important figure in the development of music. Tends to be, in the popular imagination, it's kind of overshadowed by Mozart, and that's not Mozart's fault. But Haydn definitely he doesn't belong in anybody's shadow, and these composers were all aware of that. So the way Ravel wrote this, obviously we've got the name of Haydn has a Y and an N, which is not great from the point of view of music because we only go up to G. But as we saw in the Bach example, H can be B flat, then A can be A. Then what Ravel did was he said, well, let's make Y into D, D natural, and then D can be D, and N, we can make that a G. So I think he was sort of clutching at straws a little bit. But you can't blame him. It's difficult to decipher a name that's got a Y in it. And he chose to do a minuet. So why did he do that? Well, a minuet is a piece in 3/4 time. And Haydn is really the master of the minuet. I mean, if you look at the structure of this piece without paying any attention to the harmony or anything like that, this could be a classical era minuet, straight 3/4 time with, in bar 3 we have quavers. So he's using a very traditional form and being very avant-garde with it. And we're going to listen to a recording, just an excerpt. We'll only be dealing with excerpts here because I don't want you to listen to these pieces in an academic or in a way. I want you to actually go away and explore and listen to the music on your own. But we will hear excerpts in this video. So before we hear this excerpt, there we have the key on the top, and you'll notice that he's done an upside down treble, so you can flip the whole thing around. So the piece, if you look at the first 3 bars, there it comes out. He announces the motif, the Haydn motif, and then it comes back later on in the piece in the bass clef, and it comes back inverted. So Ravel is a very clever composer. If you look at my blog, there's a couple of pieces that reference Ravel actually. And Ravel is living in this time where it's very fashionable to take traditional things and not break them. So not to just discard tradition and the past, but to take it forward. And I think that's the mark of a true artist. Okay, so let's hear how this sounds. So next up we have the FAE Sonata for violin and piano. And as we said in the beginning, this is going to encode a motto or a slogan. So I said that FAE doesn't sound, amazing, but let's get into it. So there we have Brahms reclining in a chair, looking very melancholy. And the motto in this piece is Frei aber einsam. And there we have Schumann, both of them in similar kind of garb. So they were actually friends, and they wrote this piece as a collaborative composition. So the two of them, along with Albert Dietrich, I couldn't find a picture of him, but they got together and they wrote this piece based on that expression frei aber einsam, which means free but alone. So this is meant to evoke that mood of the Romantic period, which is a kind of overweening melancholy, to be totally honest with you. But what happened during the Romantic era is that there was a reaction to the classicism of Haydn and Mozart and the emphasis on structure and reason. And in the Romantic era, there's a kind of backlash against that and in favor of extreme emotion and a tendency to dissolve structure. So classical and romantic are kind of in a tug of war, and Brahms and Schumann they really embody, among many others, the romantic period. So each one of them got to do one movement, and it was composed in 1853, although apparently it was only published as one document in the 1930s. So I'm not sure exactly why it didn't go off as planned. Maybe egos got involved. I'm inclined to believe that because this is the era of the ego, and there are advantages and disadvantages to that as far as art and music are concerned. Um, anyway, we'll get into that another time. But we are going to hear, so the FAE motif governs all of the movements, and we're going to listen to the intermezzo. So there is just the opening phrase from the intermezzo movement, and Schumann wrote this movement. So let's listen as we see there's an F there, an A, and an E. And if you look further along in the line, you'll see it come back again. Now, when it comes to cryptograms in music, you don't have to stick to F, A, E. You can mix it up. You can go E, A, F. You can go A, F, E, E, F, A. It's not like there are rules. The composer and the audience would be in on it, and that would create the kind of that esoteric sense that we all participate to some extent when we listen to music that we feel we understand. So there's FAE. Let's listen to just the violin part and read along as we listen. And the last one we're going to look at in this video is Liszt's Dante Symphony. So let's start with Dante. So there is Dante. He is a late medieval Italian poet. It's hard to say anything about Dante really because you could, and people have, populate whole libraries with what Dante achieved. And what Dante is really doing in his life's work, which is why Liszt, a few hundred years later, was so interested in him, that he's meditating on life and death and the afterlife, and he's knitting together classical Latin antiquity with his own, with his present day. There's a blog article I've written about this subject of artists who are reaching back and synthesizing the past and the present, how difficult it is to do, and that's why we remember the giants who did that, like Dante. So there he is with an olive wreath. He's recalling Roman history. So this piece is written by Liszt a few hundred years after Dante, because Dante is a European moment, as they say, and he continues to live on today. But in Liszt's time, Liszt was very interested in Dante, so he took Dante's Inferno and Purgatorio as his inspiration. And yes, we are talking about hell there with Inferno, and then Purgatorio is purgatory. So here it was premiered in 1857 in Dresden, and when I researched to make this video for you, and I discovered that the premiere was in Dresden, the hair on my neck stood up, because Dresden, not a century after this, will be the site of an inferno, literally, when the Allied destruction of Dresden, and the subject of one of the greatest modern novels, Kurt Vonnegut Jr.'s Slaughterhouse-Five. So history is full of these strange resonances, you could say. And but it's because Dresden historically was a center of art and culture. So the part we're interested in is the Magnificat, and the Magnificat, that is the Mary's hymn in the Gospel of Luke, and in English, my soul doth magnify the Lord, and Latin is so singable. I mean, when you go away and listen to this again, it's an amazing piece of music. You'll never forget it once you've heard it. But we're interested in this movement because Liszt incorporated what's called his cross motif. And he derived this from Gregorian chant, and there it is. So it's a very simple little motif. It's a G, an A, and a C. So that would sound like. So the important thing is we won't always find it in exactly that form, G, A, C. We'll find from G to A, of course, is a tone or a major second, right? And then from A to C is a minor third. So it's that sequence or that ratio from between the notes. That's what he called his cross motif, and he derived it from Crux Fidelis, which is a Gregorian chant. Again, I'll put that in the description. You must go and listen to that. And he laces that into the structure of this movement. So the way it opens, there's the opening. This is a piano reduction. So I'm just going to play for you on a piano reduction. Of course, this is not doing any justice to the piece. You have to go and listen to it. But just for the purposes of explaining it to you. So we start there with F sharp, and we've got 3 of those. Then we have a G sharp, and then we have a B natural. So there is the cross motif, because we're going from F sharp to G sharp is a tone, and from G sharp to B natural is a minor third. So there's the cross motif. It comes back again here. B, C sharp, E. Same thing, tone, minor third. So the cross motif is being used quite richly in this piece of music. He used it in other compositions. One of my favorites where he did it is called Die Hunnenschlacht, the battle with the Huns. So I think the name alone means that you really have to go and look that up. I'll include links for you to go and do that. But let's now listen just to this introduction. I'm going to play it for you on the piano. Of course, I don't have a 60-piece orchestra in my living room as yet. So I'm going to play through it, this section on the piano for you. And as you listen, follow through and notice how those cross motifs sound. Okay, so I'm sure you found that interesting, but you might be wondering, okay, why is he telling me this stuff? Well, this is very, very relevant to you if you're interested in learning any musical instrument. For some reason, it's common for people to think you can get away with learning music without knowing how to compose or improvise, and that's not true. Music teachers should be teaching people not only how to read music, it's very important that they do that, but also to improvise and compose their own, because that's what it's all about. And also, looking at music in this very critical way is a great way to develop your music theory knowledge. I mean, I am not a fan of these so-called simplified manuals. I think that it's like studying, it's like studying butterflies by reading about them. It makes no sense. And I think young people, being young doesn't make you stupid. I think it's very important that you look at authentic, real material and cut your teeth on that, and you'll grow so much in the process. So what I want you to do is compose, whether you're a pupil of mine or not. Um, I'd love to hear from you if you're not, but compose something. And very often, when I tell people to compose, there's this reluctance in climbing up, and it's understandable. But this is a nice way to ease yourself into it. So what you can do is choose a simple word using letters A to G. Don't try and be ambitious like Ravel just yet. Make a word. It can be a simple one: dad, bead, baggage, cabbage, something, and make a little motif out of those. So once you've created a motif out of those letters, and this gives you the sort of plausible deniability. People get so self-conscious about composition. This way, you can say, "Well, I made a word. It's not my fault. It sounds like that." Okay, leave it at that. I mean, we can save face. I understand that that's important. Now, once you've created a motif, even if it's just 3 or 4 notes, actually, the shorter the better. 3 or 4 would be good. You can do a couple of things. You do a call and response. So you can have the motif very strongly and then just repeat it softly, or the opposite. Or what you could do is reverse the motif. So if you did a motif, say, I don't know, cab, C-A-B, then you can just do the reverse, B-A-C. See how they sound one after the other. And once you've done that, once you've played around and found something that catches your attention, then you can add chords. And that's a really nice way to introduce yourself to the world of composing. And if you're able to do that, the more you do this kind of thing, the better you will get at improvisation. And improvising means freedom and creativity and fun. So in whatever instrument you're playing, that should be a goal. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please click subscribe if you enjoyed. If you have any questions or you want to tell me anything, feel free to do so, and I will see you again next time.